Welcome to the latest episode of the Construction Insiders podcast, where our host, Jessica Busch, talks with industry experts about new trends, best practices, and how to successfully deliver construction projects in today's market. Whatever your role on a project, we think you'll find these discussions interesting and worth your time.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason, once again. Today, we are going to switch gears a bit, and we are actually going to focus on a particular market that has seen significant changes this past year instead of a sector or a building type. So we decided we needed to speak with Joe Saatkamp, the president of Nashville-based CapEX Cumming. And throughout his career in the construction industry, Joe has managed multi-million-dollar projects, including your traditional new builds, expansion projects, and acquisitions all throughout Nashville and its neighboring states and larger cities. So we couldn't think of anyone better, not to mention the fact that his team, his growing team, I might add, our team in Nashville is getting quite large. It's great to see. Is currently working on some of the city's most anticipated projects, including, let's say, if I can, Joe, the well-publicized Nashville Yards development, May Hosiery, Nashville Warehouse Company, even the rebuilding of the historic East End United Church, which is very interesting to watch that develop and go through its stages of a redevelopment and rebuild. The Herman Street development, I could go on and on. The Graduate Nashville Virgin Hotel you guys just completed. So there's a bunch. And I know that was quite the introduction, but seriously, thank you for taking the time today to fill us in on all things Nashville, and welcome.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Kind of jumping in here, we all know, and you and I personally have talked about this before, but Nashville is a very resilient market. And before this crazy pandemic all started, the city was a thriving hub for hospitality, entertainment. And for those of us that don't live there, how did it get there? What was enticing for a developer? Where did this boom come from? Why downtown? You could just kind of give us a quick background on how we got to where we are.
Sure. So I can give you some. My experience in Nashville, I went to college at Vanderbilt in the 90s. And so that was really my introduction to Nashville. And at that time, it was a healthcare-based economy. And there was some tourism and some hospitality market, but not very much. Most of the business in Nashville centered around healthcare. Major healthcare companies here, also major colleges here, including Vanderbilt, as well as 5 other major colleges. So if you really go back that far from the 90s until now, I think the Nashville boom and really the Nashville development and really the comments of the it city and that sort of thing happened coming out of the last recession. So 2008, 2009, the city really had the foresight to invest, and they invested over $500 million in a large convention center, Music City Center. And along with that, the Omni Hotel was the first convention center hotel associated with the Music City Center. So even during the recession, and the mayor took a fair amount of grief for investing over $500 million in the convention center, it really poised Nashville to just ride the wave coming out of the last recession and really positioned Nashville to do very well. And so the result of that was a boom in hospitality. So more conventions started coming to Nashville. Nashville also developed a reputation for tourism and leisure. Music city. Some would argue it's still country music, but it is Music City. And Broadway really took off with the honky tonks on Broadway. So it really became a destination, a tourism destination, a convention center destination, and all things kind of fed on each other. More recently, it has been kind of the migration from New York and California and the East and West Coasts to businesses and corporate headquarters relocating or expanding their operations in Nashville. And that really raises all tides. So at one point in time there was, data suggesting there was 100 people a day moving in population increase in Nashville, and it still is one of the largest and fastest growing population centers. So it went from kind of I don't know if I'd call it a sleepy town in the 90s and 80s, with really just kind of one market sector, to a very diverse with different market sectors, different businesses growing, and a very large tourism and leisure component with it.
Yeah, it really seems like it just all of a sudden was in the spotlight. From those of us that don't live there, it was all of a sudden everything was Nashville. So
Yeah.
very interesting. And so the history is great. And so I thank you for that. And so I guess pre-COVID, during this boom of hospitality and leisure, that really played a big focus on downtown. And so coming out of this, do you think that'll remain a focus? Is downtown still going to be the main player, or what do you see kind of the future looking like in Nashville?
So I wouldn't isolate the development and growth of Nashville to just downtown. There is significant critical mass in downtown, and that's due to a fair in the convention center coming out of the last recession. Also major sports. Actually, in the 90s, when I was in school here, moved the Houston Oilers to Nashville, became the Titans, built Bridgestone Arena and have the Predators, and all of that is located downtown. There's also the performing arts and other things that are located downtown. So downtown has this critical mass. That's also where Broadway is and where a lot of the tourism and leisure is. However, over the last 5 years, there's been major developments in even the surrounding neighborhoods around downtown. Wedgwood, Houston is a neighborhood that's seen a lot of growth, still is seeing a lot of growth. Germantown, East Nashville, 12th South. These are all neighborhoods that are abutting downtown, and they're all seeing a fair amount of growth as well. Midtown, kind of between Vanderbilt and downtown as well. So those will all continue to grow with downtown. I think I expect that to continue. I don't think that will change. It all is dependent on when we get past kind of the implications of COVID. So I think that will reboot, and I think Nashville's poised to do very well in downtown. I also see developments outside of downtown. So tech has taken a fairly big interest in Nashville recently over the last few years. Their data center, Google built a data center in Clarksville, which is a town outside of Nashville. Cool Springs, there's major developments in Cool Springs, large mixed use developments in Cool Springs, which is just south. It's Williamson County. Mount Juliet and other areas, which are, I guess you'd call them the suburbs of Nashville.
Okay.
And so data centers, Facebook, Google are all kind of moving in. And then Amazon has obviously taken a very big interest in Nashville with their new office buildings, as well as distribution centers and sorting centers. So I think you kind of have to look at Nashville as a metropolitan area. The density of Nashville itself will continue to thrive, but it also expands into these outlying suburbs and outlying areas.
So when you talk about neighborhoods, then, and you also kind of mentioned on some sectors as a result, like data centers, are there other sectors that you see will be an area of growth opportunity? Multifamily, is other things outside of tech? What do you see kind of taking shape?
I'll kind of combine this with the COVID question earlier.
Okay.
So COVID has affected market sectors differently, and COVID has affected all of us. And where Nashville and COVID effects on Nashville and the market sectors, we are a tourism and we're a convention town. That's where a lot of the growth has come in the last 4 or 5 years. And the relocation of corporate headquarters here as well. So COVID's effect on travel, on leisure, on tourism, hospitality, restaurants has impacted Nashville greatly. So what I'm seeing right now that is continuing to go on is multifamily and residential in and around the downtown area. Now, if evictions start happening and lease payments start not coming in, that may change as well. But currently, I still see a strong multifamily market in Nashville. There's higher education, healthcare as well are still doing fairly well. And there's the projects that are ongoing. I mean, you look around Nashville right now, and there's tower cranes everywhere. And to my knowledge, no project has stopped. All of our projects that were ongoing are continuing ongoing. And so there's a lot of construction happening in Nashville right now. Where you see the slowdown is in new starts. And you see slowdown in hospitality and office buildings and mixed use projects that have those components in them. So it's when will that come back? And that's the hospitality market sector is where we have made the majority of our business. It's kind of what we're known for is the mixed use and hospitality development. We also do many other things, but I believe that Nashville and the market sectors in Nashville, hospitality specifically, will come back on the leisure side with a vengeance. Meaning,
and that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is this kind of just a blip on the radar? How do you see that being so entrenched in the hospitality and entertainment industry in Nashville? So
I don't think you can call what's it been 7 months, 8 months a blip.
It's no longer a blip.
Right. So I wouldn't call it a blip just for the duration of how long it's going, and it doesn't look like it's gonna come back until sometime in 2021. Mm-hmm. And I think there's different estimates of when that will come back. And if you can call a year a blip, I'd call it a blip, because I think Nashville is poised to do very well on the other side of this. And the investment, I mentioned the investment in the convention center in the last recession. The investment in this and the foresight is with the airport authority and the leadership in Nashville are investing over $1 billion in the Nashville airport as we speak, and have been over the last couple of years. And instead of slowing that down, they're actually accelerating it because there's less flights coming in and less, conflict with passengers and whatnot. So there's an opportunity, and they're actually accelerating that development. I think that is huge and will be huge coming out on the other side of this. More international flights coming into Nashville. And I think there's a pent up demand. I know there is for me personally of wanting to get out and do things.
Yes, and the list of vacation spots is growing the longer every month this goes on for everyone.
So I think that tourism and the leisure travel to Nashville and honky tonks on Broadway, the boutique hotels that focus on the leisure are poised to do extremely well coming out of this, as well as entertainment and other things that Nashville is known for. The areas that I still have concern about, and this everybody's kind of talking about this, or what are a year is a long time, and that's kind of roundabout estimate of what projections are of how long this is going to last. So does that fundamentally change business? Whether it's,
I was going to ask, is there a domino effect of all of this long term?
Yeah, so it's the work from home. Is office space going to be fundamentally different, and how companies look at what office space they need? Do they need as much office space? Are they going to be renegotiating leases over the next 3 to 5 years, and how does that affect that market sector in Nashville? I think we are poised better and we're positioned better than other cities out there because we have the migration that may in turn help Nashville. The migration of people not being tethered to an office or wanting to live where they want to live. Nashville is a very attractive city personally to live in, to raise a family in. So it may attract companies here. Their office space might not be as big as what they used to plan on, but it may attract that migration from other cities to Nashville more so. So I think that we'll see play out over the next 3 to 5 years. On the hospitality side is the other one I'm a little bit concerned about, because you do something for a year and it kind of becomes a habit. So what's the convention center business going to look like in convention center? In hospitality, you really have kind of two, you have leisure and you have group business. And group business is all associated with larger conventions. And you have the large box hotels that have a significant amount of convention space. And that's for a reason. They host large conventions and it's tied to a convention center. Is that business going to come back as strong? Is it going to look the same as it did prior to COVID? That's one of the areas I do have concerns about.
Gotcha. So in speaking of concerns, in times like this, when talking about our projects that we have going on locally and just as a construction professional in general, how do you support projects during times like this? Has your responsibilities changed? Has our team's responsibilities changed? What does that all look like trying to navigate this?
So fundamentally, our responsibilities have not changed. We're a essential business. And so all of our projects have continued to go on if they were under construction. There's been some that have been paused that were in pre-construction before they broke ground. But everything that was under construction continues. And one of the fundamental things we do is we're owner advisors and we manage risk for owners and developers. So the risk just went all over the place. This is a new thing. How do we adapt? How do we continue to produce? How do we continue to meet our budget and schedule requirements? So fundamentally, our responsibilities, our day-to-day hasn't changed. It's just increased because every day there's a new challenge associated with COVID. Some subcontractors or employees may test positive in a certain area. So you shut down that area, you clean it, you isolate those employees, you isolate the people that have been around them, yet you try to navigate and work with your team to keep the project moving and still meet your end date. So I think our responsibilities fundamentally haven't changed, but it's just become more complicated and a lot more things to think about, to deal with on a daily basis, and challenges whenever they arise. You have to work with the team to solve them. And so protecting the ownership groups, or working with the ownership groups and the entire team to navigate these waters and these challenges is where we have been focusing and maybe added workload to what we're doing prior to COVID.
So in talking about these challenges, from I'm sure what supply chain, you're talking about workers testing positive, locally, are there some examples where the creativity of you and the team have really come to shine? I'm sure there's been quite a few things to navigate on some of these projects going up.
So there's a couple projects that we're working on right now that are probably good to talk about. One is the Embassy Suites One Hotel project. That is a convention center hotel directly opposite the convention center on Demumbrian. And we're in the midst of construction. We're getting close to top out. And our skin system, the curtain wall system that provides the exterior of the hotel, is being manufactured out of China. And so that was scheduled to be manufactured and delivered right when COVID hit. So we had a supply chain issue on that, meaning our curtain wall was late. They shut down the factories, then opened them up at 50%. And so it had impacts for the skin on the hotel. And one, it's figuring out what those impacts are, that you're not going to be able to start the curtain wall when you anticipated and built into the schedule. When will we get it? And then what mitigating factors or mitigating means and methods can we apply to the project to keep the critical path and keep our end date the same? So that's one, and we've been working through that project or working through that issue. And we've restructured how we're utilizing the tower cranes to install the curtain wall system. We're going to a monorail system, which will install it quicker, and we don't have to use the tower cranes as much. So it's really working with your teams to overcome these challenges. The other that I mentioned before, and it's really happening on just about every project, the closer you get to the end of these projects, the more it impacts you. But it is, every week or every month, there is an instance. All the contractors are monitoring their personnel and their subcontractor personnel for COVID. And inevitably, there's someone that tests positive. So it's isolating those people, isolating the workers that have been around them in the last period of time. And then in some cases, it is shutting down areas of the project and cleaning it, and then opening that area back up to continue on work. And managing that impact on the projects, and does it affect critical path? Are there ways to work around it to where it doesn't impact critical path? That's a lot of what we have been doing recently, and working with the teams to try to mitigate any impacts from COVID. The last one I'll speak to is vertical transportation. A lot of our projects are high-rise projects, and due to social distancing and 6-foot separation, the amount of people that you can transport up and down a project on a daily basis the need is massive to get workers up and get workers down, and either have a buck hoist or elevators, and there's a limited amount of capacity. You can't just pack them full. So staggering work hours, staggering arrivals and departure of workers in the building. Once they're in the building, there's a fair amount of space. So you get compressed in the vertical transportation, and working around that it's a challenge, but it's somewhat easily solved if you're working with your team to do so.
And that's interesting. That's, all these big cities around the country, that vertical transportation keeps being a topic.
Yes.
Just struggle trying to get those workers up there. So, and talking about some of those struggles and challenges, I assume, just the building itself, there are changes to these projects that are still under construction or in the planning phases that are being made to kind of see us out of this pandemic for the future. Are there some of those changes that you can mention, kind of what's going on locally in Nashville with any of those changes to your projects?
Yes, so I think the fundamental changes or exploring changes to projects are happening on the ones that have not started yet. So there may have been projects that have planned to start 2020 that the developer or ownership group, for multiple different reasons, has decided to pause on. And on those projects, they're in some cases looking at or re-looking at how they're phasing the project or how they're programming the project as well. So mixed use projects are probably a good example of that. If there was in phase one, meaning they're going to do that first, there was a large office building and a hotel, they may want to rethink that. Just those markets have been affected more adversely than others, whereas a residential component may still go forward or be moved to phase one. Or you may look at the programming itself and say, we want to do smaller office component, smaller hospitality maybe larger resi, and retail is somewhere in the mix as well. So a lot of those components are being relooked at and being reanalyzed right now in projects that haven't started. And we engage with the ownership groups to do that, to cost and explore different options and figure out what is best for the project in the environment we're in, and looking at coming out of that environment. For the projects that are ongoing and under construction, it's really more of the logistical check and double check your supply chain, and then try to get ahead of things, try to look forward instead of reacting all the time. But when you do have to react, and even when you look forward and need to react, it's working with the team to overcome any obstacles that may that the environment may present, to scope, schedule, budget, and have a successful project at the end of the day.
Just trying to get it done on time and within that budget and keep people happy.
That's
Well,
right.
probably trying to see the future. So
As always.
Right? More than ever. So from all of this, what kind of are your general takeaways? And I can only imagine, what you expect to see a year from now in Nashville, 5 years, down the road. Just kind of how are you feeling about all this? What do you expect to see?
Oh, can we have a do-over for 2020? That's my general takeaway. But
you and everyone else.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I mentioned leadership in Nashville has really been ingenious in some ways, and willing to take a fair amount of risk. The investment in the convention center in the last downturn, the investment in the airport this downturn, I really think shows the vision of the leadership in Nashville, of what Nashville can be and what Nashville is doing and how it's growing. So my big general takeaway from all of this is that we don't know when, but this will end. And it may end slowly, but it will eventually end. And Nashville is positioning itself to do extremely well once it does. And I think with, I mentioned before, the pent up kind of wanting to get out. We're a tourism, we're a entertainment, we're a convention city. We have corporate headquarters moving here. We have people moving here. I really think we're poised to do extremely well coming out of this. I would encourage. I'm transplant from Texas, and I have always related Nashville to Austin, Texas. There's so many similarities, I can't begin to speak about them, but I actually think Nashville has some things going for it that Austin doesn't. And Austin, if you're familiar with Austin, it's just grown. The growth in Austin has been tremendous through the last recession over the last 10, 15 years. And I would encourage anyone interested in Nashville to make that comparison and look at Austin, look at the challenges Austin has had and where has been successful, and apply that to Nashville. So I really think that we are here in Nashville, when we come out of this, sitting very well, even compared to most of the rest of the cities in the United States. I really believe Nashville is one of those cities that is still the it city. It's just dealing with COVID right now, as we all are.
Right.
The challenges that I think the city needs to address has to do with transportation and infrastructure. So we already saw some of that prior to COVID, and it's just going to continue. So there will continue to be growth across all sectors. Nashville will continue to grow. It's really poised to do very well, but we in Nashville really need to look at our infrastructure to support that growth. And that's where Austin ran into challenges, and I think that's where we will run into challenges as well. But a year out from now, I think we'll be coming out of this. I see the leisure coming back first. And then 5 years from now, I think 3 to 5 years from now, I think we're right back where we were, if not ahead of it, with the investments in the airport and other kind of things in Nashville to support the growth and support the development here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like the page they're taking out of the playbook by investing during these downturns and down these slow times to diversifying and really just trying to prep to the future. I mean, other cities should be taking a look, it sounds like, what's going on in Nashville.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
That's great to hear. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know we've been talking quite some time about really doing a deep dive on Nashville and what's going on, because it is such a unique city down there and what you guys have going on. So thank you. I hope everyone learned a little bit, and we can see what the future holds.
Thank you.
See where we go from here.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
If you enjoyed this episode of Construction Insiders, we encourage you to check out our website at www.ccorpusa.com. That's ccorpusa.com, where you can find our full knowledge library under the Insights tab. It's all great stuff. We're really passionate about it, and we hope you'll check it out. Thanks for listening.